Did you know the 4% rule can be the smartest or the dumbest rule ever, depending on how and when you plan on taking out your money? Because if I can show you historically how it can protect you in the worst years, you may love it. But if I can show you how much more money you could get from it, you may not like it. Now, I'm going to go through also how much money you can get out safely. We're going to go through the RMDs because that also goes into the 4% rule, and that is a common question. And can you get out a whole lot more money and do it safely and stop any kind of financial surprises? Yes. So here's why it's smart. This is a 5% withdrawal at the worst year you could have retired. In this case, the year 2000. Now this happened again in multiple circumstances over the last 100 years. It depends when you retire. So in the year 2000, it was a bad year to retire, and you can't predict when the market's going to go down. And this goes into what's called the sequence of returns risk, where you can see a 5% withdrawal at $50,000 going up at the rate of inflation, 0.25%. I'm not making any more than 0.25%. You can see over multiple years, eventually by the year 2016, you are red and negative by 2016. That's the 5% rule. Now, let's say you retire in a great year with great growth. That can actually make the 5% rule work. Okay, that's fine. But let's talk about if there's a 1% fee. And what's that 1% fee? If someone's managing your money and you're paying a 1% fee. Most people that have growth also have it with the 1% as well. So this 1% fee makes a massive difference. So let's do the same thing with withdrawing money at the 5% rule. Down, down, down. But by the year 2014, you are as broke as a joke. And all that money you saved, that $1 million, it's gone. But let's now go into more math. I know this is really lame, it's math, but you need to see the actual numbers here. Let's look at the 4% rule with a 1% fee. Now, even the 4% rule with a 1% fee, and again, we're using a 2.5% inflation rate, because 2.5 has been a pretty safe inflation rate to adjust for. Some people say 2%, I'm going 2.5 just to be safe. But you can see 40,000, 2.5% over and over and over again, boom. But you're broke in the year 2020 with the 1% fee. So that 1% fee doesn't make a big difference, because if there was no 1% fee, you wouldn't go broke. Big difference. So here's something that no one is going to tell you. If you're withdrawing 4% with a 1% fee, you're actually a 5% rule. You're not a 4% rule. So there's something to be careful of. So when there's any kind of management of your funds, always allocate towards 5%, not 4%. Now let's talk about the RMDs and the 4% rule. Now RMDs only apply towards pre-tax or qualified funds. If you've already paid taxes, there are no RMDs. So you're only paying an RMD based on what you have that you haven't paid taxes on. And I'm going to show you basically how this works with the 4% rule. So here is an exact spreadsheet of how much money you'd have to take out with RMDs if you had $1 million. And you can see that the percent that you have to take out goes up every single year because it's a ratio. It's a ratio between what you have in your balance and what you have to take out. And that that ratio of the RMD percentage only goes up. It goes up and up and up. If you make it to age 103, you're going to take out 15%. You probably won't, but just in case, you have to know you take out 15%. But you can see in these ratios, the numbers change accordingly depending on how old you live. So this is how much money you'd have to take out if you had $1 million. I'm using even numbers to make this easy for you. But again, just to be clear, this only applies to pre-tax or qualified funds. So anything that you have to pay taxes on, this doesn't apply. So anything that you have that you don't need, you can actually reinvest. So whatever you take out from your RMDs that you don't need, you can just put back in the market in post-tax dollars and let it grow. So that's what the 4% rule is made for. It's made for a 30-year strategy. Now that 30-year strategy, that's because there's a study out of Harvard, and that Harvard study says that if you make it to 65 years old, the average lifespan for a male is 84, for a female is 86. Now if you're married, between the both of you, there's a 50% chance that one of you will make it to 90. My grandmother just turned 96. God bless her. Let's look at an annuity, because this is the counter argument of could you take out more money, and the counter argument is can you just use an annuity? I don't say yes or no, I say we look at the math. And here is the projection of $100,000 to show you what is a withdrawal for $100,000. The benefit is 7.75, giving you $7,750. So instead of getting 4% or 5%, you can take out 7.75% in the state of Texas. Now, in other states, it's less. In other states, it could be maybe a little bit more. But it's going to be anywhere from 7.25 to 7.75 that I've found across the country. Not too big of a difference unless you're in the state of New York. New York is much lower. So New York, this does not apply. And this applies to rates today. Rates can always change. Be aware. So now you can see that rate. Now this is if you're taking money out immediately. You're taking $100,000 and you want money today. But let's say, for example, you're 65 and you want to start taking money out 2 years later. Well, are you going to get the 7% or 7.75%? No, you're actually going to start getting 9.4%. Now, why am I showing this to you? Because it's very important later on down the road in the counter argument of why this is a bad idea and how you can get around this by using what's called an annuity ladder, by letting certain parts of your annuity season for a couple years and you can take out more money. So the counter argument to using an annuity is inflation, which means that $7,750, and again, let's use a flat number of just $7,500. I won't use that top number. Let's say $7,500 for $100,000. That stays static. Well, the 4 or 5% rule goes up with inflation. So that's always increasing while the annuity is the same. But before I say it's a good or bad idea, I use math. I know, novel concept. Let's look at the annuity paying you $7,500. Now again, that's less than the $7,750 that I showed you, or the 4% rule going up by the rate of inflation, 2.5%, or the 5% rule going up in inflation by 2.5%. And you can see after 10 years, at the age of 75, you've taken out $75,000 from the annuity, $44,814 under the 4% rule, and $56,000 under the 5% rule. That means you lost 40% of your savings when you could move around and use the most amount of money safely. The same thing when you are using the 5% rule, you've lost 25%. That's just the math. There's no argument to math. That's just how the math works. Now, the argument is eventually it will catch up to the annuity, and that is true. So at the 5% rule, you catch up to 83 years old. So for the first 82 years, so from 65 to 82, you got a lot more money, right? When you're spry, you're moving around. In your 80s, you don't move that fast. You don't move sometimes hardly at all. In the 4% rule, again, you break even at the age of 92. So if you want more money, this is a safer way to do it. So you start spending less as you age. This is just a known fact called the go-go years, the go-slow years, and the no-go years. And I'm watching my father age. I'm actually really sad about it, but I could start seeing how we move so much slower. And my grandmother, who's 96, is on a walker, and if it wasn't for my father, she would probably be in a nursing home. So as you're aging, you're spending less. You probably don't have a mortgage. A lot of your expenses are no longer there. Your desire and movement just start going down. But the one thing that always goes up is healthcare costs. And that is something you have to allocate money for, especially if you're going to be on Medigap, because the cost for Medigap over the coming years is going to be higher and higher and higher. So that's something you do have to allocate money for. Now, if you're in Medicare Advantage, most of those have a $0 premium. But that doesn't mean that the out-of-pocket costs are not there. They are there. Also, Social Security has a cost of living adjustment, a COLA, and not Coca-Cola. Now, if you have a pension, it may go away at 75 or 80, and that's something you may have to factor in. This is why people who make the argument that, well, eventually the 4 and 5% rule will catch up. If you look at how much more money you're going to earn before the age of 80, you're always going to be ahead. Always. But if you're afraid of inflation, you can ladder the annuity. Remember how I just showed you how from 65 over here, it's 65 years old and you're willing to wait 2 years in the annuity, you're going to go from that 7.75 to 9.4%, just giving it 2 years. Now, this money is guaranteed for life. It's not hypothetical. You don't have to worry if that money is going away. It's guaranteed to be there year over year over year. This is why the 4% rule, in many ways, is insanely stupid. You can get so much more money safely. Now, saying that to you, is this just my opinion? Is this the Mike's opinion? By the way, I'm an enrolled agent by the IRS. I know a lot about this stuff. I was a New York State math champion, so I don't really use bad math. But just hypothetically, did I use bad math? Hate to brag, but just need to tell you. You can see all of these studies pointing out where an annuity is right. Now, there's a really good study that came out by the Brookings Institute, and here's a statement of independence saying that no one was paid, there was no financial basis for the study. And it goes through the academic case for annuities. I truncated that, so you have to read the whole thing. This is just one video, and you can see there is the academic case of study after study showing why the annuity model works. You're just going to get paid more money with less risk. More money, less risk. Not a bad problem. But the problem is, and this is the reasons, the discrepancy between why people get them and why they don't, is that rational behavior can be, in many ways, very optimistic. And here's what it says about why people don't buy annuities. And that is, when it comes to uncertainty, people typically make irrational decisions. Now, I don't want to make any personal judgments about getting married, but that's another story entirely. But let's talk about why people don't get annuities. And it's typically because they have too optimistic of a view of what's going to happen in the market. They don't ever think the market's going to come down. The market right now, as we're talking right now in 2024, is very high. There's a famous rule: what goes up must come down. And you are old enough that you've seen it over and over again. This is not theory. This is a real thing. So people get very optimistic, and that's only when the market goes down. And what do you find? That people get into the market sometimes, especially into certain stocks, after the market moved, and they get out after it goes down too far because they're afraid of losing. So this is the fear of missing out, or FOMO. It's a common problem where people get in emotionally and then also get out emotionally, making it worse and worse. And here's something you need to know. One of the study that was interesting said that one of the worst decisions that you can actually have as you age is the ability to make decisions about your financial future, which means the more decisions you make as you age, the worse decisions that you will probably make because you're not seeing things clearly and you're thinking very emotionally, worried about running out of money. This solves that issue. Now, does this mean you should get one? Well, no, not necessarily. I don't know you. I don't know your circumstances. But it's a great alternative versus the 4 or 5% rule. It means it's less money out of your pocket for the same income, which means that you could take the money that you weren't going to use now for income and invest it. And if you look at the sequence of returns risk, you could have less than 50% less money invested that you're not drawing from, and it will out-convert twice as much money in the market that you're drawing from. So it's kind of like getting the best of both worlds. Now, there are some circumstances where that's not true. Like, for example, if the market goes up exponentially or super high for 5 years in a row. In that case, then it may not work out. But this is why this is considered an optimal method, because it's the best situation for the majority of people in the majority of years that they retire, and it's the safest, and it gives you peace of mind. So this is safe. It's guaranteed. It's not hypothetical. It's made for your payment for life and also for your spouse. You don't have to worry if you're going to run out of money. Now, in most states, you get 100% asset protection. In some states, you get some asset protection. I don't know what your state is. But also this helps with probate. So if you pass away earlier, you can just pass the money to heirs. Here's something else. Income annuities and New York State don't mix. So if you want to get income and you're watching this from the state of New York, probably not a good idea. Now, I prefer diversification. I see all of these things as tools. I don't see the annuity as better than equities. I don't see equities better than annuities or better than bonds. I think they all have their place. And this is why I think it's terrible when people say you shouldn't get an annuity, because when you see how much money you can get out safely and securely, sometimes the question has to be asked, isn't it better just to enjoy your life, get more money, and not worry about the things that you could have missed out on and be certain of what you have in retirement? I say in most circumstances, yeah. So if you want income, I think you allocate that money with an annuity. You want growth, you allocate it with equities. If you want a mix of growth, then a fixed index annuity can be good because you don't have the downside risk. Or you can use bonds or bond ladders if you want to allocate that for income. These are all just different tools based on what's best for you. There is no right answer except for the fact that each tool is better than the other at what they're made to do. And that's why I believe in diversification. And that's why I think that it's best for you to make this decision that's best for you. And if you want to see how I can help, click the link in the comment. I can see if I can help you. Let's see if we can talk. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes. I don't know if this is even good for you, but let's talk. Looking forward to it.